Hello and welcome back to the Lowdown, everybody, and joining myself and Mikey McCubbin today, it's Joe Thomlinson. I was away for a couple of weeks, but I'm back. So is Mikey. Joe is here as well. We're all in shorts because it is hot outside. And the transfer window, guys, is also starting to heat up.
Nice,
Start
man.
of July now,
Nice.
new PSR era. It's going to be a busy next few weeks before the start of the Premier League. And today, guys, we're going to talk about 10 summer signings that could fix your club. And Mikey, let's kick off with one that is very much the talk of the town right now.
Yeah.
Eze potentially going to Arsenal, and there's a few other factors involved in this. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it's an interesting one with Arsenal at the moment because we're just waiting for them to sign the first attacker, and then it feels like the conversation can move on a little bit. At the moment, it's like, are they going to sign Eze? Are they going to prioritise a striker? Like it's hard to know, where they're going exactly. But I think. I do think the general, winger / other attacker conversation has been probably a bit too quiet, like in the build up to like the latest news. I think we spoke so long for almost the entirety of last season about Arsenal needing a striker, when actually Kai Havertz, aside from the injuries, had a pretty good season. Was still their top scorer. In terms of, expected goals and assists, I think only Bukayo Saka topped him in the squad. It's nice for, I think, Arsenal to be heavily linked with someone like Eberechi Eze, who I think will bring so much quality to that forward line and bring something that no one else really offers in that forward line. He's a more prolific dribbler than even Bukayo Saka. And I think that's something that Arsenal did lack last season in terms of what they had to offer, either going off the left or through the middle, as someone who can actually break down or break through low blocks with their dribbling. Obviously, Eze isn't necessarily going to help when it comes to like springing attacks really, really fast because, someone like Gabriel Martinelli on the left is far more used to staying wide and latching onto through balls, and Zubimendi coming in, that could be transformative for someone like Martinelli who's so good at that. And having a supreme progressive passer like him in the midfield will be massive. So in that sense, like Eze's a bit of a strange move, but obviously we've heard as well that Arsenal don't see him as a left wing option, or at least not their number one left wing option. I guess he's going to be playing minutes in the centre if Ødegaard's not injured, or if they need something different to Ødegaard.
Do you think Ødegaard needed a bit of competition as well? Because he did have a bit of a drop-off, I think it's fair to say, last year.
Yeah, and you back him to get back into form because last season was his first down year in an Arsenal shirt. And he is still, club captain, so like it's unlikely that he's suddenly going to be dropped. But I guess the question mark there is, and I guess be good to get your perspective on it, both of you, is what does that say for Nwaneri? Is he going to be just Saka's backup rather than playing a central role? Are we going to see something happen to him like we've seen with Lewis Skelly, where actually you're going to be playing not in your favoured position, and your versatility, just maximising their versatility. But I do, I still would love to see Eze in an Arsenal shirt. I think he would, balance that attack really nicely. And Arsenal, like they do need more bodies in that attack. The one thing I do feel that if they are going to spend nearly 70 million on him, and I know they want to spend less than the 68 million euro pound release clause, but if they are going to spend upwards of 60 million on him, is that a bit of more of a vote of confidence in Martinelli? Because I can't see them spending that money on Eze and then going all out for a left winger who's going to cost upwards of 70 million. Most of the left wingers that they've been linked with so far would cost that, whether it's Rodrigo or someone else. And then, of course, there's the links with Madueke as well. Again, like Saka backup, can play on the left as well, but he's, is he better than Martinelli on the left? I wouldn't say so. His attacking numbers, even on the right, are not better than Martinelli. So it's a funny one. By the time people are watching this, maybe, there will have been more developments. But I don't know what you guys think in terms of where Arsenal should be prioritising. Like, should they actually just be going all out for a top left winger and, leave Eze for now? Because it's a little bit of a confusing one, even though I think he would be a great signing.
Yeah, well, that was my confusion slightly before the news came out this morning that they are looking for a left winger and Eze, or a winger and Eze. Because I did think an attacking trio behind Havertz or Šeško or whoever their starting number 9 is next year of Eze, Odegaard and Saka felt a little too static. It didn't have enough threat in behind. And yes, people will come back and say Martinelli can offer that off the bench. But I did worry that with Timber and Lewis Skelly and Calafiori not like natural overlappers on that side, it could get a little bit too crammed in the middle of the park and make them fairly predictable. So I was excited to hear that it was a left winger and Eze ideally to bring in. But Joe, as Mikey points out, the Rodrigo deal looks very expensive. Bradley Barcolla's paying for treble winners PSG. Nico Williams seems like his absolute priority is Barcelona right now. So if someone like Madueke comes into the frame there, do you think he is a significant upgrade in that left wing position, or is he just being brought in as a sort of Saka alternative?
I actually really like Madueke as a potential option because of that versatility to cover on both sides. I would have reservations potentially about how much that's going to cost. You know, Chelsea aren't going to let Madueke go for free. He's under an extremely long contract. He himself has, had quite a good season playing on the right-hand side. Does he want to then shift to the left-hand side? Where does he see his future competing with Saka when at the moment you would say there's a clearer route to the first team at Chelsea? So I think there are question marks about the Madueke deal, certainly. I really like the Eze move, particularly because I think Arsenal last season didn't have enough depth in those attacking midfield areas. When Martin Odegaard picked up that long sustained injury, there wasn't the cover there, and we can't just think of Ethan Nwaneri at 17 as coming in and being that guy to replace him. There was chat, wasn't there, last season of, we're missing Emile Smith-Rowe, missing Fabio Vieira. Well, if Eze came in, he could not only offer alternatives to Odegaard, but play alongside Odegaard, you'd think. For me, Eze is an outstanding option, not just on the field, off the field. He's a great character. I think he would add a lot to that Arsenal dressing room, and clearly that is something that Arteta has prioritised. You look at a lot of the signings, even Christian Norgard, who's coming in this season, you would say that there are potentially better options on the market for a future prospect point of view or from a talent ceiling point of view. But what Norgard is going to offer is not just excellent defensive ability, but also leadership and off-the-field work in that dressing room. And I think Eze provides that too. So, I think characters are important to Mikel Arteta, who he signs. In the left wing position, I do think that Rodrigo has to be the number one target, but I don't see a world in which Rodrigo, Eze and Sesco Gyökeres come in. I think that's too much money.
Yeah, it's a lot. I do think, with Eze, it's the way to see it is almost like the upgrade on Trossard, like someone who can, play in both positions, someone who can, impact the game in a way that, like Trossard at Brighton was almost like what Eze is to Crystal Palace at this point, in terms of someone who can pick up the ball deep and affect play through the phases. So I think from that perspective, it makes a lot of sense in terms of what Arsenal are doing in trying to kind of renew positions, trying to upgrade positions.
And look at the rivals they're competing for this title with. Liverpool, the options they've got in that attacking midfield area. Szoboszlai, who had an excellent season last year, they brought in Florian Wirtz. Harvey Elliott can play in there as well. Curtis Jones can play more advanced. You look at the Man City options that play off that striker, be it Marmoush or Foden or Cherki. Gundogan, Bernardo Silva, Doku. The options that play in that sort of advanced area are so deep. They're playing 60 plus games a season now. Arsenal are going to be aiming to go to the end of every single competition next season. I think having just Martin Odegaard as your senior attacking midfield option probably is a bit thin. If you were saying the same about Man City or Liverpool, you'd say they need to bring some cover there or a player who can compete and start alongside him. And I think that's perfect for what Eberechi Eze is, especially at this moment in his career. I think Eze is ready to take that next step.
Yeah, for sure. I think he actually had quite a sort of average by his standards first 2/3 of last season. I think he was struggling slightly with Elise's departure, and Wharton was out for so long, and Anderson had obviously left, and there's big name departures in there. But from the end of the season, final 5 games, I think he scored 5 goals in the league. He scored in every round of the FA Cup from the quarterfinals onwards. And what an end to the season. He's now become an England regular. If it's signed alongside a left winger, I think it's a sensational deal. But let's move on to a club that was supposedly in for him as well, in Spurs. And Joe, they're now being linked with Mohammed Kudus. Maybe we'll talk about some other positions they need. But Thomas Frank and Spurs haven't had potentially an ideal start to the summer as compared to some of their rivals.
Yeah, I think it's been a bit difficult, hasn't it? Because they've been turning over manager. I don't think they've been able to plan quite as effectively as some of the other sides, say Arsenal, who would have had a lot of these targets sort of earmarked early in the window. Tottenham are having to adjust on the fly a little bit because of the Thomas Frank arrival. I think a lot of the players will be given second chances or the chance to start afresh. I think positionally, you're going to see a lot of tweaks as well. Will we see Archie Gray as a centre-back anymore under Thomas Frank? Not so sure. I think you're probably going to see him play more in his favoured midfield position. I think there's probably going to be resurgence of Brennan Johnson, for instance, on the right-hand side. Frank tried to sign him a number of times at Brentford, didn't he? But certainly, I think the defensive midfield area is an area that could potentially be looked at. Yves Bissouma approaching the final year of his contract. Sarr, maybe not an out-and-out number 6. I think Bentancur could have some really good moments under Thomas Frank. But if you look at the players and how they progressed the ball through Norgard and Janelt, Damsgaard dropping a little bit deeper at Brentford, I do think that midfield potentially could do with some sort of additions. You know, there's going to be a lot of pressure on James Maddison to receive the ball and progress it. His injury record, not amazing. He missed 1,300 minutes of Premier League football last season. Kulusevski might play inside in that 10 space as well. But I think we should discuss Kudus, right, while we're here, because the chat is that, you know, they're interested in him. He's interested in going there. They're going to try and pay below the £85 million release clause. For me, it is a bit of a risky signing because Kudus had a down season last year. However, West Ham as a whole had a down season last year. There was not very many members of that squad who came out of it smelling like roses, other than maybe Jared Bowen. I think Mo Kudus himself will be disappointed with his output. It dropped significantly pretty much across the board, be it from a creative output, a dribbling output, goals and assists. They just weren't there. I think if you took the season before, though, in isolation, and you said, you know, he's still only 24 years old. Look at what he was able to do under David Moyes in that system where he had a little bit more freedom. His ball carrying ability was some of the best in the Premier League. Both the data and the eye test supported the fact that we were potentially looking at a breakout star here. There was chat that teams were going to pay that £85 million release clause. Yes, he's had a downward season, but I don't think that should be a write-off. I think he'd be a really good signing for Tottenham Hotspur. The goal involvements were there last season at West Ham. They were there in the final campaigns at Ajax as well. I still think when you watch Kudus, there is an element of genius there. Now, he didn't show it last season, but that's not to say Thomas Frank couldn't get the best out of him again. I think he'd be a really interesting option because he can play in the 10. He can also play in the wide position, so offers cover on the left, on the right as well. There's very little downside if the fee is right, but I do think West Ham are going to rinse him.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Like, I think it massively depends on the fee. I think for Thomas Frank to go to a new club where there is expectation, where there's pressure from the fans, you know, who don't feel like the squad has been invested in enough over the last few years, even though I would argue actually under Ange, like the squad was invested in pretty well actually. I know lots of young talent, but a lot of money was spent in a number of areas where it hadn't been. To bring in Kudus from a London rival for huge money puts huge pressure not only on the player but on Frank himself. So I think, I agree. I think it massively depends on the fee. I wouldn't really want to pay upwards of 60 million for him. But I think, when you see what Frank has done with players like Wissa and Mbeumo at Brentford, I'm really excited to see like how he can maximise potential.
The one thing I will say though,
in that forward line,
I know you say like upwards of £60 million. You look at that market at the moment that's moving around that sort of similar fee. Joao Pedro, in and around that sort of number. Bryan Mbeumo, more than that number. Cunha, more than that number. Semenyo, Bournemouth reportedly asking around £70 million for. I think it's very realistic that West Ham should be asking for that sort of fee, despite the fact he had a down season.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels like a number of that sort of mid to lower table of the Premier League could be losing like a key player, and Kudus could be the guy from West Ham as well. I agree with Joe and yourself, Mikey. I thought he was really, really poor last year. I mean, so was Lucas Paquetá as well. It was really the Jared Bowen show, and obviously Mikel Antonio had his horrendous car crash. Fulkrug had injury issues, didn't really start gelling with that side until later in the year. It was just a really difficult campaign, and he felt like he was playing with a lot of frustration within him, a bit like Cunha at times as well. His disciplinary record wasn't particularly impressive, but with that versatility, Premier League proven already, I think Thomas Frank, who has really taken every attacker that he's ever worked with forward, I think it could be a really smart move. I think it's worth talking about Aston Villa and their goalkeeper situation, because it does feel like if they do have to sell anyone this summer, Emi Martinez feels like a really good option for them to sell, especially with the speculation around Ollie Watkins, but they'd then have to sign two strikers because they didn't really replace Jhon Duran with a natural number 9. Rashford's not signing permanently by the looks of things, and Asensio as well. So Villa have a big summer ahead, and if they could get a considerable fee from Emi Martinez, whether it's from Saudi Arabia or Man United even, that's probably a good time to sell. It'll be 33 in September. They were looking at Joan Garcia, who's now gone to Barcelona. I think that's a really, really good deal from Barcelona. Was absolutely exceptional last year at Espanyol, and they've needed to kind of upgrade onto Stegen for a number of years. He's had a number of injury issues as well, and Szczesny, as well as he played last year, is not a long-term option. The player I'm going to suggest plays for Atalanta is Marco Canasecchi, and I actually went on, I think it was Saturday Social the end of the year before last, and I recommended him for Liverpool at the time because I thought Kelleher might leave that summer, and it was before the Mamardashvili deal was done. And he'd only played 1 year at Atalanta at that stage, but he's 6'6". There's enormous potential here. Former Italy under-21 international as well, and he had a phenomenal year last year for an Atalanta side that up until sort of January, February time, were in a sort of loose title discussion there as well. And his save percentage, I think it was 21st in Europe. There was only 3 goalkeepers in the entirety of Europe that prevented more XG than him. He's an excellent shot stopper. I was watching some highlights of him yesterday, and it almost has an Emi Martinez-like playing style, in that Emi Martinez with the ball at his feet, potentially not the best, but on his line or in his own sort of 6-yard box, let's say, his reaction saves are phenomenal. And that double save, I think it was against Nottingham Forest last year, ended up winning save of the season. And Canasecchi has made a habit of that, just really good reflexes on the line. The only issue with this one is that Gasparini's left, Juric has arrived. There's some doubts about whether he'll be able to live up to Gasparini's amazing record there as well. And Man United are linked with Canasecchi as well. It's a considerable fee. I think they're looking for 50 million euros ideally, which is no real surprise given the fact that Rui Patricio, who's on their books, he's gone to Saudi Arabia. Juan Musso, who was on loan at Atletico Madrid, he's left permanently for Atletico Madrid as well. So there is a number of changes in that goalkeeping department at Atalanta, and maybe they want to keep him for another year. But at the same time, I'm sure they'd be able to pick up a Serie A goalkeeper or someone around Europe using that 50 million euros and invest in the players that Juric clearly needs. Despite the fact that Juric, having been managed by Gasparini in the past, is a supposed disciple, but having watched his sides at Southampton last year, I think there's not that many similarities at the moment, although he's obviously hamstrung by the player quality as well. So Canasecchi to Aston Villa, if they could get it done, I think would be a good option.
I'm surprised there's not interest in James Trafford from Aston Villa. If it's true that Emi Martinez is going to leave the club, it feels like Newcastle have got a free run at James Trafford right now, one of the most exciting young goalkeepers in Europe, in my opinion, and we shouldn't be afraid of saying that because, you know, a lot of the chat is, English overrated. But what James Trafford has done at an international youth level, what he's done in the second tier of English football this season has been absolutely remarkable. From nearly every aspect, he looks like one of the most exciting young goalkeepers on the continent, going for £30 million. Like, that is value right now, especially when you're signing a homegrown player from a team that's going to be playing in the Premier League next season in Burnley. If Newcastle have a free run at this, I would be really surprised. I think he's going to be such a good player for them.
From the perspective of Trafford as well, if Martinez was to go, then it's like
you got a free run.
You're number one, aren't you? Whereas him coming into Newcastle, he's still going to have to battle Nick Pope, even though I think Trafford's got way higher ceiling than Nick Pope has ever had. But he's still he doesn't have that clear run at the first team. So it is a funny one that. But maybe Newcastle and Trafford have just had an agreement.
Newcastle
this time last year.
I
mean, that would be the final straw, wouldn't it?
Well, he went on Ben Foster's podcast I saw earlier, saying that he nearly joined them last summer as well. So it's been a long time coming. Right, let's talk about some others. We often get accused on this show of only focusing on the top 6 or the biggest clubs, and that's not what we're doing today, guys. We're going to talk all the way down the table. I mean, Mikey, you were having a think about defensive midfielders potentially for Leeds.
Yeah, I mean this one was kind of done for me because I saw in recent days that Leeds are being linked with Anton Stack at Hoffenheim.
A Lowdown favourite, I believe.
Yeah, I think we've touted him out for almost anyone. In fact, I was looking back through episodes, and this time last year I was recommending him for Fulham as a kind of not a Palhinha replacement, but someone who could help make up for that. I think he was averaging nearly 6 tackles and interceptions a game the season before last. So in terms of someone who can bring physicality, can bring monster challenges, can also contribute a bit in the final third as well, can drive with the ball, Anton Stack does tick a lot of boxes. And I think a running theme that we've seen with clubs who have come up from the Championship and gone straight down, of which there have been 6 in the last 2 years. A kind of softness in midfield has been a real running theme, and that transition from being super possession based and high pressing in the Championship to then, trying to carry that on in the Premier League has been a real problem. I think that's why someone like Thomas Frank has impressed so many, just been so impressive since bringing Brentford up in 2021, is that he was able to, switch them up into so many different styles and instantly make them a more solid defensive unit in the Premier League whilst still playing, fun attacking football and maximising potential. So anyway, I digress. But basically, someone like Anton Stack, I think he would be a good fit at Leeds. I think they just need bodies in that midfield. First of all, Joe Rothwell is back at Bournemouth and may well be on his way to Rangers by the time people are watching this. Ilya Gruev is the only other senior defensive midfielder in the squad aside from Tanaka, so they need at least one more deep-lying midfielder anyway, and they need height in there, and it's probably never been more important than now that you have, players who are tall in the Premier League, especially when you're going to be coming up against teams who are going to break on you really fast. Leeds like to play a high line under Farke. Norwich did too, when he brought them up from the Championship. Maybe, he'll alter his style a little bit more going into the new season, given, the experience that he's had before in terms of relegation battle. But nevertheless, they need players who are going to be able to provide recovery when being broken on. And his record in the Bundesliga is great. He's massive. He's 6'4". He's great in the air. Like I said, loves to slide tackle. Can play in multiple positions. So, if you were to move to a back three in possession, he can slot in there in the middle of the back three. And also his fitness record's really good as well. Only missed 4 games last season and Hoffenheim failed to win any of them. So I think, he ticks a lot of boxes and also probably wouldn't be that expensive. He only cost 11 million euros when they bought him from Mainz a couple of years ago, where he was actually playing a more advanced midfield role. He's got 2 years left on his deal. Hoffenheim finished 15th last year. I don't think they're in a particularly amazing position to negotiate. And as we've seen with Sunderland's moves in the market, teams coming up from the Championship can still offer, are still able to take big talents from other European leagues.
Even Leeds themselves, they signed Lucas Metzger, who was really highly rated. I know his brother's the one at Dortmund that's kind of garnered more headlines over the last few years, and then Bijol as well from Udinese, the centre-back for Slovenia that absolutely killed it at the Euros. I think it does show the financial implications of being promoted in the Premier League. You can compete with Liga, Serie A, Bundesliga for their players and potentially persuade them to come and join the league that does garner the most eyeballs in Europe. On that topic, I think West Ham need a striker. And we've been here before, guys. We have been here before. Their list of strikers they bought since 2018. Have a listen to this. Fulkrug, Evan Ferguson, Scamacca, Cornet, Ings, Haller, Lucas Perez. All signed since 2018. Would anyone call any of those a success story? Some of them are decent players, like
some
Haller.
of them have gone on to become.
Yeah, Scamacca was a success when he went back, and Fulkrug obviously had an injury hit year last year, but he already kind of had to succeed in his first year or so because he's deep into his 30s now. And I always thought Darwin Nunez would be a really good option for West Ham if they could afford him. But it looks like he's going to go to Napoli, and obviously as Scudetto champions, playing in the Champions League, much bigger club than West Ham, that makes a lot of sense. But I think a situation that they can take advantage of, and I almost feel quite cruel saying this because, it's horrible when a club is relegated for financial issues, but Lyon have been relegated to Ligue 2. They are appealing the decision. I think it has been delayed about whether that's actually going to come through, which is obviously so tied on to Crystal Palace's future in the Europa League as well. But they've obviously lost Ryan Cherky. Ryan Cherky went for a real bargain fee, I would say, for a player of his talent. Maxence Kakare went to Como in January as well. But I think they should look at Georges Mikautadze, who they signed from Ajax permanently last summer. He played more of a backup role than I actually had kind of in my head when I was initially thinking of this transfer, but still got 11 goals and 6 assists in Ligue 1 last year and was averaging the same expected assists per 90 as Bruno Fernandes. And it's slightly different from the West Ham model in the last few years, but Fulkrug's still going to be there. If they are losing Kudus, he can play as a 10. He can play on both wings as well, even though he is a centre forward. And this is a guy who has shone at Euros. He was the joint top scorer at Euro 2024 for a Georgia side that was so entertaining, so front-footed, so fun to watch on the break. And he's exceptionally fast. He's an excellent dribbler, can play in a variety of different positions. and played well for Lyon last year, played well in Ligue 2 for Metz. That got him that move to Ajax. Only lasted 6 months there, then went back to Metz and then on to Lyon. So he's had a number of different experiences, and maybe you'd be slightly wary about the fact it didn't work at Ajax, but Ajax in that time were going through a number of different issues, both on and off the pitch. So I can see this happening, and I can see it being a fairly cheap one as well. And 17 league goals and assists last year was only 2 fewer than Cherki in 600 fewer minutes. And in terms of a Graham Potter number 9, I don't think anyone really has nailed down what that is, because he did use Evan Ferguson when he was there as well. But his top scorer in every season he was there was Neil Maupay, who is a Mikautadze size player, let's say, if not quite as dynamic. So Mikautadze to West Ham, can he be the one to end the curse? Maybe.
Do you know what? I still can't believe that Fenebahçe have had such a free run at Jhon Duran on loan. And I'm presuming the money must be absolutely insane behind the scenes in terms of his wages and sort of agent fees.
It could be like a 65 million fee as well.
It feels like, some of the clubs, not just West Ham in the Premier League, that need number 9s when Jhon Duran was on the market in that January window and went for 70-odd million, were quite interested in him. I think West Ham were one of the sides that were very interested in Jhon Duran. To now see him join Fenebahçe in the space of 3 days is really, really surprising. And I think he would have been an ideal option for West Ham if they could have got in on that deal.
Yeah, even a club like Chelsea, who, rather than João Pedro, you sign Jhon Duran and you rotate him with Nicholas Jackson. I think that would have been great.
Delap.
Oh, Delap too as well, to be fair. But there's been talk that they're going to go for a number 9 as well. I think Jhon Duran, even Man United. I know there's obviously some attitude concerns there, I think. But I think a number of clubs, even Newcastle as a backup to Alexander Isak, although he didn't really like being a backup at Villa, did he? So let's see what happens there in terms of West Ham going forward. But it looks like it won't be Jhon Duran. It looks like I haven't heard anything about Mikautadze, but I was pleased with that suggestion. I think it was one of my better ones. Joe, let's talk about Bryan Mbeumo. Where are you at with this deal? This one feels like, I don't know about you, but I feel like this will be done. It feels like the valuation difference isn't that different now. Are you concerned about the price it could potentially get to? Where are you at?
Well, first and foremost, we're recording this on Tuesday, right? So by the time you watch this, something may well have happened. There may well have been movements around the market, in particular Bryan Mbeumo deal. It feels like this is the week where something is going to happen, if it's going to happen, because of course Man United return to pre-season, I think, next weekend or next week anyway, and United want that deal wrapped up so he can join in with the training straight away. I think it's an absolutely ideal fit for that right-hand side 10 role. Him and Matheus Cunha are instant impact, instant upgrades, and I think that's probably something that Amorim has been searching for. Players that can come in and have impacts straight from the off, rather than having a large adaptation period coming from another league and making changes to their game. I think that what he offers in forward areas is excellent, but also what he offers off the ball, his tactical discipline is amazing. And given some of the other fees we're seeing in the market, João Pedro, that deal, some reports suggesting it could reach £60 million. I think Gittins in a similar sort of range, £55 million. I think Brighton are well within their right to ask for £65-70 million for a player who's coming off the back of 20 goals in the Premier League. Yes, there are a few penalties, but the season before that, he was putting up, I think, 12 goals, wasn't he? And he only started 20 or so games because he had the ankle problem. I think last season he would have got close to that 20 goal mark if he hadn't have had that ankle problem. So you're looking at a player who has an incredibly high ceiling, who's still only 25 years old, banks of Premier League experience, and is an instant impact for Manchester United, who don't score enough goals. The creative numbers have been in decline across the last 5 seasons. The goal-scoring numbers are at a record low, 44 Premier League goals last season. Only Everton scored less than them in the Premier League last year, other than the relegated sides. It's not enough from a Manchester United side that have had so much investment in forward areas. So I think the Mbeumo move is excellent. What it means for the number 9 is quite interesting, and we should discuss the Ollie Watkins links from earlier this week, because it probably means United aren't going to spend as much on a number 9. That's a large chunk of budget, £120 million plus, going out on Matheus Cunha and Mbeumo. But is there a player in the market who is the right age, the right fit, and can contribute the number of goals that an Mbeumo can? I think United are probably looking at this and saying there isn't an ideal candidate for that role, whereas Mbeumo is an ideal candidate for the right-sided 10. So would we rather spend our money there and then try and sell players and budget a little bit in the number 9? I think that's probably the route they're going down. For me, the number 9 is a really, really tough position to sign for any team in the Premier League.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it?
What do you think of the Watkins deal?
With Watkins, I mean, I love Ollie Watkins. I was suggesting him as a potential centre-forward option even for Chelsea last week, if he could be got for the right price. But I think Yeah, like I think if you're looking at like Watkins and Mbeumo, in terms of what Man United really lack in, I still think if you brought Ollie Watkins in, he'd move the needle more in terms of what you could expect from a centre forward at Man United. Whereas in Mbeumo, he's coming into a position where Bruno Fernandes can play that position pretty well, and then if
Ahmad
you were
too.
Ahmad as well.
Ahmad's better.
Although, like I guess that's where Mbeumo really solves a problem, is that you can have Ahmad as a wing back, or you can even have them swapping during the game between wing back and right 10. I would love to see that. I think they would do great there. But I think in terms of like purely in terms of having a goal scorer up front, I still think someone like Ollie Watkins gives you more guarantees. And Mbeumo, amazing last season, and I have no doubt if United sign him that he will score a lot of goals in the long term. But 120 goal season, I think, is like that. That's in isolation. He overperforms XG a lot, as did Matheus Cunha as well. Previous seasons he didn't reach double figures in the Premier League, which isn't to say he's not a really top Premier League attacker, but he doesn't.
The season
guarantee...
before he would have 9 goals in 20 starts or so, 15 goal involvements in 20 starts. I think if he didn't have the ankle injury, he would have got right up
like
there.
you were saying. But still, I think Ollie Watkins is a bigger guarantee of goals, and like given what United. What he's upgrading on in the centre forward position, which is Rasmus Højlund, who is completely out of sorts over the last 12 months, and Joshua Zirkzee, who does not look like a natural goal scorer in the Premier League, compared to what Mbeumo is upgrading on in the right 10, which is actually quite a number of options, Bruno Fernandes or Joshua Zirkzee. I still think there's a bigger upgrade to have at the centre forward position, but like you say, it's just really hard to get a striker. There are a lot of strikers on the market, but they're all at a very big price, and they've all got a number of suitors who seemingly can't make up their minds as to what kind of striker they want. So it's and also, it's an easier one to pull off than Mbeumo. And to be honest, like if you can get Mbeumo in the next couple of weeks, that is way more valuable than kicking off a saga with like Gyökeres or Ollie Watkins that lasts until the end of August, and then you've got a striker coming into a team and is going to be a bit unsettled at the start of the season. So I think that's honestly where there's more value for United. Like I'm excited to see what Matheus Cunha does at the start of the season, because he's going to have all this time with the squad, and like him and Mbeumo, like to be able to work under Amorim for a full month before the start of the season. I would like genuinely be excited to see what United's attack looks like, because it will look like it won't. I don't think United's attack will have looked like that for years. I mean, they're two kinds of players that United haven't had for a long, long time.
Yeah, I also think that we shouldn't forget how difficult it would be to acquire Ollie Watkins. Aston Villa don't have a backup number 9. They were asking for £60 million in the January window from Arsenal. You've got to convince Ollie Watkins to exit European football for a project like Manchester United, which has been struggling. He's going to want the big contract, his career-defining contract at 29 years old, joining Manchester United, who are extremely high profile and have players within their ranks that are currently earning £200,000+ a week. Ollie Watkins has every right to say, I want to be one of your top earners here if you want me. I'm not going to be coming and playing European football, and this is probably my last big payday, because after this one, I'm going to be 30+. I wouldn't necessarily be getting huge offers from other Premier League sides. I think Manchester United would find that deal really difficult to pull off from a number of different avenues, whereas Bryan Mbeumo has, not publicly, but members of the Brentford hierarchy have come out and publicly said he wants to join Manchester United over the last 7 days. So I think that is a defining factor in that transfer.
Much easier win, for sure.
Let's see what happens there for sure. Right, let's talk about Everton, because Everton, it's a fascinating what's going on at Everton, really. Something that's kind of gone under the radar, I think, is the amount of players that have left Everton at the end of their contracts, the amount of loanees that aren't being retained. So Doucouré, Young, Virginia, Begovic, Holgate, Mopé, all leaving. Harrison, Lindstrom, Mangala and Broja, none of their loans were made permanent. Calvert-Lewin's leaving. Michael Keane's out of contract as well. They're in talks with Idrissa Gueye, Seamus Coleman, and crucially Jared Branthwaite over new deals.
I think Coleman signed.
I think Coleman's already signed, actually, my bad. And then next year, I think it's Tarkowski, Mikalenko, and James Garner are out of contract as well. So welcome to Everton, new owners, and David Moyes. Like that's a busy summer. They have managed to sign Carlos Alcaraz, who I actually thought had a really good impact on loan there last year, and I think it was 15 million euros. They're linked with Thierno Barry as well, the Villarreal striker, who looked really promising in limited minutes. I think there's a 40 million euro release clause on that, and if you've got offloaded all that wages, maybe they can sign that as well. Again, exciting potential link. But I think they need a right winger because Lindstrom and Harrison have now gone. And I wonder, it's very ambitious, but I wonder whether they could land the loan signing of someone like Brahim Diaz from Real Madrid. I think there's a possibility there as well, because Arda Güler looks like he's going to play a much
Mm-hmm.
role under Xabi Alonso. Rodrigo, I don't think there's a guarantee that he leaves this summer. They've signed the guy from Argentina as well, Mastantuono, and they've got an option to re-sign Nico Paz in a few years as well, who was so exciting at Como. Brahim Diaz was brilliant the year before last, mainly off the bench, and actually had a considerable impact last year. He averaged a goal or an assist every 200 minutes or so, mainly off the bench as well. He's been out on loan before to Milan. Look, that's obviously a really attractive club to join, much more attractive than Everton. But where are his minutes at next year? I don't know whether he's guaranteed of that many more minutes as well. So if they could enter the hat for someone like Brahim Diaz, I think that'd be really, really exciting. Other names I put down as well. Does Oscar Bob go out on loan from Man City? Potentially.
James McAtee as well.
They've got a number of options. James McAtee.
McAtee and Iliam Dyer, I think, would take up a lot of similar sort of spaces, though.
That's the one
I
thing
guess so, yeah. Although, I mean...
Iliam and Dyer can play off the left as well.
Like, yeah.
And then another name I thought of as well was Leon Bailey at Aston Villa. I think Aston Villa would absolutely be delighted to sell Leon Bailey. He barely played at all last year, barely made any impact. But the year before, he got 19 league goals and assists. It kind of completely forgotten that as well. It felt like that without that driver of Moussa Diaby behind him last year, his form really suffered. So Brahim Diaz, Oscar Bob, Leon Bailey. I don't know what sort of budget Everton are going to have this summer, but they did actually finish pretty safe in mid-table. They've got a new ownership group. I'm sure they'll want to make a few statement signings. Maybe Brahim Diaz is a little bit unrealistic, but I'm sure they could enter the hat for Leon Bailey. So let's see what happens there. Right, we've got two more to do. Joe, let's discuss centre-backs for Bournemouth, because they've obviously lost Huijsen already. Zabarnyi, it looks like it probably will be done at some stage as well. And then they're a little thin.
Yeah, I mean, this is like the impossible task, right? The back line at Bournemouth has been decimated by Europe's best sides. The left-back's gone to Liverpool. The centre-back's gone to PSG and Real Madrid, potentially if Zabarnyi gets done. Even the goalkeeper, Kepa, has gone to Arsenal. So, as you can see, the unit was so exceptional that it's got to a level where some of Europe's best sides, if not the best side in Europe, want their players. I mean, the fee for Zabarnyi is now getting pretty eye-watering, isn't it? If we're talking 70 million, that is a huge fee, even for a club like PSG. He did have an exceptional season, but clearly it's going to be tough to replace these players. How do you replace Dean Howson? This is sort of a unicorn centre-back who can step out the line, intercept. He's 6'5", he's calm and composed on the ball, he's got an amazing passing range. Zabarnyi, much more dogged, a huge duel winner. I think it's nearly impossible to find players of that level, despite the fact Bournemouth have got probably a kitty of 150 million in sales. I think it's going to be really, really tough to sign players of that standard. So maybe you have to adjust a little bit and look for difference makers in the market. I like Bafodé Diakite from Ligue 1. There's a couple of options. I really like Wilfred Singo, but I don't know whether or not he's going to be gettable. There's a lot of interest in him. Trying to convince him to come to Bournemouth isn't going to be the easiest.
The mighty Black Cats
either.
Sniffing around.
But I do like Diakite. I think he could be gettable. I think his contract's up in 2026. Still only 24 years of age as well. And there is, similarities in his game to Zabarnyi, I think a little bit more than Howson, in that he's far more combative, a real duel winner, very, very athletic, going behind himself as well. So I think he could be a good option that's gettable, achievable for a realistic fee if you're Bournemouth, because it's not going to be the easiest to convince, some superstar names that have the output of Howson to come and join you at Bournemouth. Because realistically, when you're comparing Howson to other centre-backs on the market, you're talking about some of Europe's literally best players, aren't you? So I think the centre-back market is pretty stacked. The issue is with Howson as well, he played as a left-sided centre-back despite the fact he can use both feet. Do you want to sign a left-footed centre-back there? If you're the Bournemouth recruitment team, you're probably looking at that an option. So I was also thinking potentially Renato Vega at Chelsea. You know, he's clearly on the bomb squad now, went out on loan to Juventus, wasn't fancied there, he's returned. He's offered options as a left-back, as a defensive midfielder. He's excellent on the ball. We saw that at Basel when he played in that defensive midfield role.
Wants to play centre-back as well, though, doesn't he?
Yeah, he wants to play as a centre-back. He's 6'3", he's very commanding, and he's still only 21 years old. I think for the right fee, he would be a smart pickup for a club like Bournemouth because of his physicality and the stuff I've spoken about, him being very comfortable on the ball in those midfield areas. I also really think there is a market opportunity in Taylor Harwood-Bellis. Like, I know Porto had the £20 million bid rejected this week. There's a reason they're interested in him. He is excellent on the ball. You look at some of the pass progression numbers from Dean Howson, sort of 4.5 per 90, one of Europe's best for that age group. Well, when Taylor Harwood-Bellis was in the Championship at a ball-dominant side, he was putting up close to 6 per 90. Now, Southampton obviously sort of broke the stats there, didn't they? Because that Russell Martin side was so ball dominant. But even last season, when Southampton didn't have loads of the ball, it was over 4 progressive passes per 90. He's done it at Manchester City, at the England youth level, and now he's done it at Southampton for a couple of years. He's a leader in the dressing room as well, England youth captain. I think there's a real market opportunity for somebody to pick up Taylor Harwood-Bellis for a reasonable fee. I'm not saying it's going to be Bournemouth, although South Coast connection, doesn't have to move house potentially. I think he would be a really smart pickup for somebody.
Yeah, I think with Renato Vega, I like the Renato Vega shout as well, mainly because I think it would be quite an easy win to get him on loan and then for him to be able to have a starting centre back position.
Yeah, I think there's options there in the market to be sold. I don't think Chelsea are going to utilise him.
Nah, but I think they would. But I think they would welcome him building value on loan at another Premier League club, and then
big sell.
Being able to sell him on from there, or build up value while on loan and sell him for a bigger price to Bournemouth in a year's time.
I reckon they end up going for somebody like Diakite. I think they have that physicality is what they're going to look for.
I did actually consider Renato Vega for Sunderland as well. I'm going to talk about Sunderland's centre-back options because Luke O'Nien, amazing servant for the club, but was in League One with us for a number of years as well. Probably feels upgradable at Premier League level. Dan Ballard had a really big impact towards the end of the season, but again, he was on the bench for the most of the last bit of the campaign, and Chris Mepham's already gone back to Bournemouth as well, probably due to their issues with centre-backs. Maybe we could get him later in the summer, but I'm not so sure. But to be honest, Sunderland's start to the transfer window has been really exciting, guys. I mean, Enzo Lefebvre signed. Diarra's arrived as that sort of Joe Bellingham replacement as well. We've signed Reinildo, the Atletico Madrid left-back / left-sided centre-back as well. If there was some speculation, we might switch to a 5 at the back. And then, as it stands, we're linked with Marcin Bulker as well, who was Nice's number 1, former Chelsea, PSG player. That could be really, really exciting, although there has been a lot of speculation that a number of clubs are in for him as well. So by the time this goes live, that might be off the table. We've also been linked with Charlie Cresswell of Toulouse. Now, he was an absolute stalwart for, again, the England under-21 side in the Euros. He was in the squad, but not a key member in 2023. So along with Harvey Elliott, part of both squads, and came through at Leeds, went on loan to Millwall the year before last. Never really got that much of a look in at Leeds. I think he only made about 10 appearances for them ever. And there's a lot of Leeds fans now regretting that because he was exceptional at Toulouse last year. And now he's been linked with a number of clubs. And he's really combative, plays on the right-hand side of a back 4 in Toulouse as well. They finished in mid-table. I think they were 10th in Ligue 1. So Charlie Cresswell feels like he's going to have potentially more enticing offers than Sunderland. We've already talked about, Bournemouth needing a centre-back. I think there'll be clubs like Everton potentially looking at recruiting centre-back talent as well. So he might not want to go to Sunderland. The player I wanted to suggest was Facundo Medina, who's at Lens, who Gisolfi, our new sporting director or assistant sporting director, brought him to Lens. He's now become an Argentina international. But annoyingly, hours before we started recording, he's joined Marseille. So that's off the table. The player that I think we could get is Luka Vuskovic, who's now the Spurs youngster, 18-year-old centre-back. Now, Christian Romero's future at Spurs looks a little bit uncertain, but they've got Danso, they've got Dragusin, they've got Van der Ven, they might still have Romero. Vuskovic has just arrived. Do Spurs want to send him on loan for a year in the Premier League? And I think he would get a number of minutes. He fits our model in terms of the age of players we tend to target. And he was on loan at Westerlo last year from Hajduk Split in the Belgian Pro League. And he was absolutely frighteningly good. His stats were through the roof in every category. He was taking over 1.3 shots per game. Just completely dominated that league. And he's an absolute man-mountain of a player as well. 6'4", only 18 years old. And come for a year on the stadium, in the northeast, man, and get some regular game time. We'll look after
Put some hairs
you.
on your chest.
Put some hairs on your chest, man, and we'll play you as well. Him and Dan Ballard, units at the back. I'd be exceedingly
Cannot
excited
wait to see
about that
him
as well.
roaming, cutting through defences.
Shooting from range.
He
scored a lot of goals from big threats from set pieces.
Crazy. Watch some of the highlights of him on Twitter or on YouTube. Like, over the last few years, he's been far too good for every league he's played in. And I think a logical step is go to a lower table club in the Premier League, get some minutes, and see where you go from there. Because I think there's a very decent chance that in a year's time, if they do keep Romero for a final year, and Romero leaves, then he's ready for Spurs' first team. And it does feel like even if Romero leaves, Vuskovic is still going to be fifth choice. I imagine they'll go in for like a Mark Gehi or someone of that level. So I don't think he's going to get a lot of minutes next year.
Gehi will only be at Liverpool. So.
Yeah, well, maybe. But he has been linked with Spurs as well. But guys, those were 10 transfers to fix your club this summer. Hope you guys enjoyed the array of clubs we covered. Massive thanks as ever to Joe and Mikey. If you've enjoyed this, go check out last week's Lowdown, where we were talking about the perfect signings to fix Chelsea. Mikey had Ollie Thomas and Matisse on, and we'll catch you next week. It'll be Mikey in the hot seat and two very special guests. We'll see you then.